Atlanta Film and TV. This is entertainment journalist Mandisa Johnson, and today we're having a conversation with creative strategist and career consultant Alyssa A.Lewis, who is also a primetime television Emmy winner, animator, most noted for her animation on over 75 episodes and promos of FX series Archer. She has created content on NBC's 30 Rock, Discovery Channel, MTV, I Am Other, Animation Domination, Comic Con San Diego, Georgia Public Broadcasting, and Captain Planet's Planeteer Movement. As founder and executive director of Georgia's first and largest animation and resource staffing agency, My Animation Life, her team works to find creative strategies and solutions for both studios and independents. Creating Georgia's most inclusive animation map, calendar, and classified listings are just a few of the popular assets that My Animation Life provides to strengthen Georgia's animation industry. She uses her education in animation from Savannah College of Art and Design and business from Harvard University online towards emerging artists in film and digital media and creative employment, business development and animation production and pitching. In addition, Lewis is on the board of directors ASIFA, one of the largest international animation societies in the southeastern United States, and a judge for the Emmy Awards. Hello, Alyssa. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you again for introducing me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, can you take us on your journey of how you fell in love with animation to how you got your start?
Yes. So when I was 2 years old, my mother and I were watching Looney Tunes, and I saw Bugs Bunny being drawn to life. I had never considered how the animation I watched was made. And when I saw a hand come in and start drawing Bugs Bunny, I thought, that's what I want to do. So at that moment, I thought, that's what I'm going to do with my career. That's going to be my job. And I told my mother that that's what I was going to do. And she said, "You're going to be a cartoonist?" And that's the term we knew. And I said, "Yes, I'm going to be a cartoonist." And I've been on that path ever since. I've had other interests in my life, like I thought about getting into plants and trying to find dinosaur bones and those kind of things that children look into when they first learn about careers. But my eye has always been on animation, and it's always excited me. Unfortunately, I come from a background that did not allow me to go to a lot of art schools. My dad was in the military, so we traveled a lot from base to base. If you've ever been on a military base, a lot of times it's like a small town. They did not have art classes. And when I finally got to settle down into a regular civilian school, a lot of times they were in actual small towns that didn't have a lot of funding for the arts. And I spent a lot of my classes doing coloring book activities and small tasks, arts and crafts in those classes. So most of my animation education came from on my own at home. I didn't fully understand what kind of software needed to be used to create animation. So I did a lot of traditional methods. I would use paper and pencil. And when I did use software, it was Microsoft Excel and Microsoft PowerPoint. So I would, excuse me, not Excel, MS Paint and PowerPoint. So I would take MS Paint and draw my characters and save the file and then put them in PowerPoint and just click the button really fast and watch all the images go by. When I finally got to college, the first college I went to was Wesleyan College in Macon, Georgia. And I excelled a lot in my artistic studies, but I wasn't learning how to be an animator. And that's originally what I went there for. So I ended up transferring to the Savannah College of Art and Design, also known as SCAD, in Atlanta. And that's where I learned a lot about the 12 principles of animation, what kind of software is used, what the animation pipeline looks like, what are some things I need to know before getting into the industry. My first quarter, my first year at SCAD, I got a job working at Georgia Public Broadcasting. They collaborate with PBS, and I remember getting my first taste of working with other professionals and just how exciting it was to be a part of something that would be broadcasted out to the rest of this country. I also got a freelance opportunity with Sean Stevens on Somebody Stole My Pancreas Productions. So I got to meet other people like voice actors and stuff who were in the industry. And in 2008 is when I probably had the biggest turning point in my career. That was when the recession really took its toll for my industry, and I was still out there looking for consistent work that was closer to the television work I wanted to do. I ended up spending 7 months going back and forth between temp job to temp job and settling on working in um, this construction company as an executive assistant and helping with ordering supplies and project bidding. And then at night, working at a yogurt shop where I would come up with different recipes and stuff. And the entire time I was working, which was 72 to 80 hours a week, it was so many
Wow.
hours. I continued working on my portfolio and creating work. And I didn't have a computer because I had been out of school and I did not have any access to software or anything like that. But I did have half a day off every week and access to a
Wow.
public library. And I would try to apply for jobs in the animation industry, figure out what other networking events I could go to. I would still go on my half day off, and I would put my animations on a little player that I got from this fast food place, but it didn't have toy decorations on it. So I put my animation on it and I would show people it. And eventually I showed it to someone who said, "Show me the rest of your work." So I took an animation test, got into the studio, and that is how I started working on FX's series Archer. After getting in and working on Archer, things got a lot easier. I was able to network with people and get to work with people who were working on 30 Rock. I got to do a little bit of Family Guy, a little spot of that, getting to work with Animation Domination and with so many other entities that I normally would not have had access to if I weren't already working in a production for television. And then after doing a lot of that, I decided to start my own company. The idea had been in my head for a few years. I think about 8 years I had been doing staffing on my own, just lightly. And when I started my company, I felt very confident that I had all the information I really needed, at least the foundation. And then I quickly learned that there is so much more that I had to acquire information wise, like how to do contracts, how to really chase an animation bid, how to staff a full production, all of that. And that's what I do today. I do projects with clients that need an animation completely done. I staff artists for just one spot in the pipeline. And I also do education. So if anyone needs assistance with figuring out how they can get into the industry, whether it's television or commercials or some other aspect, and if they would like to create their project and they just want to know what it's going to take to get it done.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So you may have hit on the next question that I have. Maybe if you can expound just a little bit. But and I can kind of explain too. But growing up, did your family recognize your gift of the arts early on? And if so, how did they nourish it to facilitate your growth? Like for instance, my mom, like I would come home from school. We had drama class. I believe I started in kindergarten, and I would mimic what my drama teacher would do, and she would always encourage me, by watching me. And I little did I know I was performing a monologue. I didn't know that until I got older, and I would write plays, and here I here I am X amount of years later, doing what I love to do. So, can you talk about how your family nourished the gift of the
Mhm.
arts?
My family has always been fairly supportive of me being an artist. My mother, the most. She's always been a person who believes in chasing your dreams and fighting for what you believe in. My father was a little bit more concerned. Both my parents are from Guyana, which is in South America. It neighbors Venezuela, Brazil, and Suriname. And they come from also a time period where people who look like me, African American females with deep complexions, don't always get the dreams they go after. And so they wanted me to go after something that was a little bit more, in their opinion, secure. They didn't want me to be the stereotypical starving artist trying to sell my paintings at the side of the road. So they put me in sports. They put me in track and field. My dad tried bodybuilding, which did not work. Basketball didn't work. Softball didn't work. Golf didn't work. Tennis didn't work. This is a long list of different sports that we tried. I did do track and field. I did excel in it, but not enough for me to make a career out of it. They also gave me some information about general business practices in case I needed that in my future. And they have their own business. So there was an opportunity for me to join them and do that work. In general, they supported me, but they also were worried. When I was younger, they would buy me art supplies. I think it's the common artist story of you're the artist in the family, so you get these art sets, but the people who are buying them don't really understand creative tools. So you get paintbrushes with the plastic bristles that are all the same length and they're really hard to paint with, or you get that watercolor set and it's really chalky, or they give you the crayons and instead of Crayola, they decided to buy the rose art. um, just all those little things. So they supported me. They bought me art supplies. They would show my art around to other people. There was one time when I was 12, my mother had a art mentor come to my house and just see what my art looked like and if I had a chance of going forward. And he said I definitely had potential in that if I attended their school, then that they could really develop me. We ended up not
Wow.
going forward with it because we had to move. We moved a lot, but there were things like that that they would do. And when I decided to go to art school, they were not upset about it. My dad was a little upset when I was in middle school and high school after I told him, Dad, I'm never going to get an athletic scholarship. I'm going to be an artist. He
Right.
didn't feel so great about that. He was like, don't ever say that again. But he didn't say you're not going to be an artist. And he really tried to keep it to himself. I'm very thankful of that. And when I finally got my creative job, people were relieved. And my mom more enthusiastic about me now running my own creative solutions agency and really making this art a living.
Wow. Yeah, that story sounds very, very familiar. I actually have I have an uncle from Guyana, so I'm pretty familiar with the country. And I interviewed um, a filmmaker and an actress from the film Ludi from the what is that film festival? The Atlanta Film Festival. And
Mhm.
the female actress said some of the same things you did about, they wanted her to have something lucrative because she was Haitian.
Mhm.
So they tried to get her into education. So that story sounds so familiar. I think a lot of times parents, especially when we were growing up, they were very I don't know what the word is, but I guess it's reluctant about us going into the arts because they didn't feel like it's money was involved because my grandmother was like, because I at first I wanted to be a doctor, and she was like, you don't want to do this, but my love and my passion was the arts. I did not do well in sciences at all, and she was like, you'll make money here, and I'm like, well, this is what I love to do. So, very similar stories. So, upon leaving SCAD and Harvard University and embarking on upon your professional career, were there any moments of fear or self-doubt you had to conquer? And what were some of the day-to-day obstacles you had to overcome as a Black woman operating in a space viewed primarily as a white art form?
Mm. It's a lot. I'll start with the first one, which is so I still attend Harvard University online. It's just online classes that
Okay.
I take to learn more about business, leadership, and law. And there definitely were some obstacles to overcome in general. And there has been times of fear. I would say fear has happened most of the way. When I first got into college, I didn't think much of it. When I went to Westland, I excelled in school. Academia has never been an issue for me. So I thought college is going to be a breeze. There was rarely a time I can think of when I came home and had to do homework. I could finish my homework at lunch, on the bus. Studying was a breeze, so college is going to be fine. And then I got into college and learned a new kind of studying, a new kind of research we call deep research. I learned that art with a deadline is equal stress, and all these different methods and techniques that I had to take into account outside of me just expressing myself creatively. I remember having a teacher who was so thorough about craftsmanship. We had to cut out some painted shapes, and we had to paint them and make sure they're perfectly opaque, no transparency at all. We had to really showcase our command of this medium. And I completed my work. I spent so many hours on it. And the day I turned it in, she took two strands from her hair and laid it in between a tiny sliver of a space between two of the
What?
shapes and said, "Your shapes are two hairs too far apart. That's 20
Oh,
points
wow.
because it's 10
Oh my
points a
goodness.
hair." And I was, oh my gosh,
Oh, what?
it's just unbelievable. So that's the level of dedication we had to have to craftsmanship when I was at Westland. And then I went to SCAD. It wasn't so strict on craftsmanship, but you had to understand the techniques. You had to make sure that no matter what it takes, you got your project complete and on time. And that means reaching out to other people to collaborate, strengthening whatever strategy you're using now. So maybe that means doing more research and figuring out how you can do it better. If you're slow in some areas, finding other ways to speed it up outside of whatever you've been taught in class. So this any means necessary, get it done on time. That was really, really stressful. And coming from a lot of different small towns, I didn't understand how to correctly send an email. I struggled so much with technology. I remember I turned in my portfolio, and this is 2000s. I sent in my portfolio on a floppy disk because that's what I had and that's what I understood.
Right.
I had class assignments where we had to watch a film and analyze it. And there was one film where I only watched half of it, but I thought I watched both. I thought I watched the whole thing. And I did not understand that you could take a CD or a DVD, excuse me, and flip it over and watch the other side. I'd never heard of such technology. So he gave me a 50 on that assignment. Oh my goodness. There's so many things that I am not caught up on, and that made me worried if I would be able to keep up with my peers. So I started taking a hard assessment at what I was good at, what I could offer, and where I was falling short, and then finding people to interview on how they made it. Did anyone from my situation make it? And there were several people like that. So I became the president of something called the SCAD Atlanta Animation Society, which is an animation society run by students at Savannah College of Art and Design, the Atlanta campus. And through that presidency, I was able to reach out to people on behalf of that organization and get them to give me more information on how I could make it in the industry. So I would bring them in and say, "Can you talk to our club about how you made it?" And we ask all these questions. Now, if I were an individual and just reached out to them, the answer is no. I mean, I have other things to do with my time. But the second you can turn it into a more valuable experience by bringing more people, by attaching a name that they can put on their resume or exhibition list or whatever it is that we're doing with them, then it's more helpful. I remember wanting to go to Turner and to learn more about the pipeline. Is there some other place I can fit in or some way that I can use my skill to get into a studio like this? And when I called in for a tour, they said no, they don't let individuals come in. But then when I called in as the president of the SCAD Atlanta Animation Society, it was yeah, sure, how many people are coming? And then we get the date scheduled. I have the school
Wow.
helping me set up the tour. And so leadership has really helped me overcome a lot of fears because it's connected me to opportunities that I wouldn't have had as an individual. I did that as well with joining a SIFA Atlanta, which is now a SIFA South, getting to join with organizations like the Atlanta Film Festival and put on events with speakers who ran animation studios. They were not going to give me the time of day as a student. But if I say, on the behalf of the Atlanta Film Festival, I'd like to invite you to be on a panel called, and I came up with the panel name, I'm the moderator, I have all the questions, then yes, now I can make these relationships with people. And that helps me decrease the amount of fear because now I'm more prepared. When I was starting my first television job for a major show like Archer, I had a lot of fear. I didn't have as much experience with the program or with the pipeline as a lot of my peers, or at least that's what I assumed at the beginning. I went into it assuming, like, oh, I must know the least, I must be the lowest, that kind of mentality, because I had kept that mentality the entire way. I come from a small town, I barely can send the email, I don't know how to hand in things on a professional format, so I'm using floppy disks, I can't do all my classwork the same way other students because I always am like the country bumpkin who's learning about how the world works. And so bringing that mentality in was not helpful, but when it comes to interacting with people, but it did put a fire in me to always try to continue learning because I knew I
Mm.
always had to prove myself as adequate or as competent or whatever it is as my counterparts. And so I used that fear the entire time to bust my butt through 5 seasons. And when I started my business, I was not that fearful. I thought,
Mm.
oh, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. I'm always connecting people with opportunities. I have helped my parents with business. I've done temp work. I've done all sorts of stuff, sure. And then I get a call. My first month, I got a call from a studio in New York and then a studio in California. And I thought, oh my gosh, the things they're asking me for, I've never even heard of. These documents you want, what? What? I just writing it down. Yes, right away. And I spent so many hours trying to figure things out. And those hours were filled with very deep concentration and lots of listening and also lots and lots and lots of tears because oh my gosh, I'm pretty sure I cried almost every day. It was so stressful. It was like a tsunami was hitting me. I don't 100% know how I mentally survived the first 2 years, but I did. And now I'm not very fearful. I'm not. I'm in a place where things seem to be going really well. I understand how to make money. It's just how to expand, how to turn my business from something that sustains my living and a few other people's to something that really can matter in a grander scheme. Um, as a Black woman, I remember that second part of your question. It has been interesting. So I have, for the majority of my life, been the Black woman, and sometimes
Mm.
the Black person or the person who is not white in this group. And that has been something more prevalent when I went to schools that were civilian schools, especially ones in Georgia. I had the pleasure of going to what I would consider Klan community schools, where everyone you speak to has some connection to the Ku Klux Klan and hate is
Wow.
rampant. It was very, very challenging. I feel fortunate for one thing, and it's that when it came to art, no one ever said you will not be able to be an artist because you're Black or because you're female. I never heard those words. I heard so many other things. You'll never be a leader. You'll never be able to be on TV. You'll never be taken seriously. You're not going to get a job here or there. I've heard all those things, but
Wow.
never you won't be an artist. And I think because I didn't hear that ever, I kept my confidence that I could do art. And when I got to college, there was so much diversity, especially at Savannah College of Art and Design. It's a very diverse campus. And there are people from different races, different ages, different cultures, different countries, different languages, all sorts of people at this university. And they really opened my eyes to the amount of access I have to a different experience. I felt before that I was in a bubble and maybe the whole world is just like this bubble. And when I went to SCAD, I just felt so much hope for what the world could be because of the positive experiences I had with the people there. When I went to my animation classes, it was fairly diverse too. There are Black women and Asian women, there's men, there's all sorts of people there. And I didn't think anything of what the industry would look like when I got out. I do know that when I watch Disney behind the scenes videos, it's predominantly white. When I
Mhm.
watch other animation studios, predominantly white. I just thought, okay, well, that's just, where they live or that kind of stuff. It's not until I got out of school that I saw the waterfall. And the waterfall is who gets a job and who doesn't.
Right.
And I have thought about it so many times. And I'll tell you, I've had a range of experiences. I've been a student at art school, I have
Mhm.
been an artist at an animation studio, I have been an artist freelancing, I have run my own company, I have worked with other companies who are hiring artists. I have been a career advisor at the same university at SCAD, and got to see students in their environment working. I have gotten to hold my own workshops and just to do a lot of different things that give me a wider perspective of why that waterfall exists. And I've
Mm.
spoken to other colleagues as well. There are a number of reasons. Um, do you want me to go into reasons or just tell you about my experience?
Yay. That's fine. It's answering the question, so that would be
Okay.
great.
So I have had a range of experiences. So I'll give you one of what the experiences that I laughed the most at. And I think this encompasses a lot of it. I remember being at a networking event with, I think it was four of my white animation colleagues, male, and another person who we were just meeting came in front of us. We all work at the same studio. And this guy comes up and he's like, "Oh, you guys work on Archer. That's so great." And he's like, "What do you guys do?" And we all one at a time say animator, 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 animator. I'm at the end, animator. And he's like, "Oh, that's so cool." And then he's like, "So you do this and this and this." And he's talking to the three going down the line. And he's figuring out, yeah, they do moving the characters, they do the acting and physics, they do the explosion and stuff. And then he gets to me and says, "So what do you do? Do you answer the phones?" And
Oh, wow.
ah,
Wow.
yeah, so those kind of experiences are more prevalent than I would like to acknowledge, but they do happen more than they should. So it's
Mhm.
always a mix. I like to think that whenever people have their biases, it's never because it's just like one like insular thing about you. It's not just because you're black. It's not just because you're a dark skinned black person. It's not just because you're female. It's not just because you're tall or you have curly hair. It's like a mix of a lot of things. There are things that definitely make it more likely to happen. And being black and female in an animation industry is not something that people see often. So I get that. On the other side of it, I also have black people who come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, I didn't know black people did animation." And I'm like, "Yeah, here we are." Or they'll say, "I didn't know, I've never seen a black female animator." And I still get that. I got that last month. A random person was in my inbox, like, "I've never met a black female animator before." Like, yeah, here you go. We're meeting. And so
Wow.
people not being accustomed to the existence of us black females as animators is something that either excites them and lets them know that there are possibilities that they were not aware of for themselves, for their loved ones, or it shocks them and makes them ask a lot of questions that I don't
Mhm.
appreciate, but I understand they're curious. uh, what that means for anyone who's in an industry where they are not commonly seen is that sometimes people ask you more questions than they do other people. And that means checking your work more than someone else's. You might be quicker to get in trouble than someone else for the same exact thing. You might have to make sure that your work is just a little bit higher leveled than the person next to you turning it in, or you might have to articulate whatever you're saying or thinking or doing clearer than the person next to you. So
Mhm.
there's a phrase that people use. It's called black tax when you're speaking about Black people. It's that extra you have to pay to just exist in the game. And so that does happen. There are a lot of reasons why I don't see a lot of Black female animators in the industry. And um, I can list some of them. Number one, when I say like the number one thing I would say is just the early education that is even an option. I knew that animation was an option because I saw that in television. A lot of people don't see that as an option. And it's, they come from a family like mine, and my family being from another country and really wanting me to be in a secure position. They see this as a luxury job. So if you don't come from a family that feels secure enough to allow you to potentially risk what you're going to do for the first few years of your life, then you might not get to be in the arts. And that's for a lot of first generation people and from people who are from lower socioeconomic classes. They're not able to do these kind of what I consider luxury jobs. Um, Also, if they're not used to seeing you there, they might think that you will not be welcome there. And that is a concern that I get from a lot of parents is, will my child be accepted in the office? Will they be accepted in school? Will they be able to get a job? Because if you go to school and you spend all that money to go to art school, if you go to SCAD, it's
Right,
nearly $200,000 for that
right.
education. And if you're going to leave that school and not be able to get a job, then that's really risky. So some of it is just the students can't get funding from their parents or the buy-in from their parents because they're worried it's too risky. And
Mhm.
another thing is when you're in art school, I was fortunate that I went to a very diverse art school. I was surrounded by all sorts of people, and also I come from a military background where I traveled a lot. I got to interact with people from different backgrounds. So having to assimilate, having to conform, or to have any kind of compromise of my own culture, my own identity to make other people comfortable is just a normal part of my existence. And if you don't come from that, if you're surrounded by people who are like you all the time, and now you have this culture shock, or now you have this kind of demand in front of you that you need to change how you operate for someone else, that can be a challenge. And I've seen that play out where students will go to an event, or early entry artists will go to an event and they will struggle just to mingle with other people because the culture is so different. If you're coming from, like, we're in
Mhm.
Atlanta right now, if you're coming from Atlanta and you're surrounded by people who have the same culture as you, and then all of a sudden you need to know references from movies that have no people who look like you in it, TV shows that have no people who look like you in it, um, everything that has nothing to do with how you appear or how you exist, then that's a big learning curve. And
Mhm.
some people struggle with that, and some people reject it just flat out. They want to be in an environment where they're more comfortable. And if you're not comfortable being in a place where you are not prevalent, then it's going to be a bit of a challenge because we are not prevalent right now in
Yeah.
this part of the industry. And another thing I noticed is confidence. So all those factors that I talked about earlier can lead to lower confidence. And confidence is also a mix of the way we're existing in this country in general. When I grew up, I was constantly told what I couldn't do, what I couldn't be, and how I would be held back because of my appearance and my gender, and just all of that. And so my opinion of myself as a leader was so low. I thought there's no way I could ever strive to do anything that um, was high level. I stayed away from all leadership opportunities outside of like school clubs because I thought that's too much. I can't do that. Those are for other people. And it made me shrink and not go full force on a lot of things that I could have early on. And I saw that just highlighted even stronger as a career advisor when I would have student after student come in, and I was working at a diverse school, I would have students from all these backgrounds come in, and I noticed specifically Black students never asked for leadership, never
Wow.
asked about being directors, never asked about being producers. All the goals were very like low level, I say low level, but entry level kind of work. And I can relate to that, to if you don't see yourself as ever going up the ladder, or that there will ever be a place for you, then you don't ever reach your hand for that. You don't prepare for it. You don't ask for it. Nothing. So that can affect you in the hiring process as well. If someone's speaking to you and they know you have no aspirations to move up, or that it would be difficult for you to move up, or you're not very ambitious in your career, that can affect you. So I've talked a lot about just things on our end that result in this waterfall, but then there's the other side of it, the things that are a little bit outside of our control. And that is our perception by how we're perceived by other people. So if you are not perceived as someone who is high value in most of society in any category, then it's going to be a little bit more challenging for someone to see you as a leader, to see you as a good choice, to have a good feeling about you, to initially think you will be easy to work with or fun to work with, or whatever the requirements are. You might not come in at the same level as someone else, even though your skill level might be the same or even higher. And there are so many things people can do to compensate for that. Again, we're talking about attacks, we're talking about jumping through hoops, we're talking about doing more for less. Um, but that side of it, the part that's outside of our control, I feel like so much of that can be mitigated. And I think the biggest part is on our side. It is just getting your confidence up, seeing it as an opportunity, getting the support you need to get in. And then when it comes to dealing with people who might not see you as more, you have to do more. Um, you either don't work with them, or you find a way to work with them by doing more, and then eventually getting to change the game, which is what I feel like I'm getting to do now with running a creative solutions agency, is getting to teach people who don't often have access to this information, and getting to put myself in a position where people can see more faces like mine and associate it with good work and with animation.